On today's show, Darius Garland, and you're saying he's back. Garland's huge night leads the Cavs to a win at MSG over the Knicks. We're going to talk all about it on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, my new Substack, The Inside Shot, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Just drop us a 5-star rating. Leave a nice review. Make sure you are subscribed. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching this video right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Cleveland Cavaliers, big win on Monday night at Madison Square Garden over the New York Knicks. Darius Garland was fantastic, and in my opinion, the biggest reason why the Cavs were able to walk away with 110-104 win at a place that they have, against a team, I should say, that they've struggled with in the Donovan Mitchell era, where they got a win. They got one win last year over the Knicks. They lost in 5 games in the playoffs the year before. They won one regular season game against New York that season as well. This is a team that they have struggled to match up against. And on Monday night, Darius Garland said, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I'm going to go out and show everybody why I've been an all-star before and why I can be an all-star again. I thought the game on Monday night that Darius Garland played against the New York Knicks was the best game that Darius Garland has played in over a year. I do not think, and I know that he had a game last year with 36 points. I know he had another game last year with 34 points. I don't think he played a game as good as the game he played on Monday night all of last season. Now, there are a number of reasons for that we don't need to dive into. What we need to focus on is how good he was against the Knicks. Finished with 34 points, only 3 assists, a couple rebounds, did have a couple of blocks and a couple of steals, which were big plays, and we'll get to those coming up a little bit later. But he was the best player on the floor in this game. And I don't know how many times you're going to be able to say that about Darius Garland, not necessarily because of the opponents, but because of guys like Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. But to go into that building in what is certainly the first real test of the season for the Cavs, right? Like, they went into this game 3-0, but they didn't play anybody. The Raptors aren't very good. The Pistons aren't very good. The Wizards aren't very good. The Knicks are very good. The Knicks are a team that a lot of people, including myself, have pegged as the team most likely to finish number 2 in the Eastern Conference after the regular season. And I think a lot of people view them as NBA championship contenders. I don't know if I'm all the way there, but I think a lot of people do think that they are championship contenders. So to go into that building and get a win with Darius Garland being the best player on the floor, I think that's a really big deal for the Cavs. And this version of Darius Garland is not going to show up every night. It's the same thing I said about Evan Mobley on opening night, where that version of Evan Mobley is awesome and he needs to be more consistent. He needs to be there more often, but it's not possible for that guy to be that guy every night. Darius Garland is not going to be this guy every night, but he's more than capable of doing this a lot. And I thought that his shot selection was great. Obviously, he hit, I think he was 5 of 8 from 3. If I had to bet, one of those 3 attempts is going to get taken away because it came after the shot clock. So really, he was 5 of 7 from 3. He was awesome in every facet of the basketball game on Monday night, defensively too. But I think that this is a game too that Darius can draw from and that he can use as a confidence builder. Where I do think he's coming out this year. One, he looks like he's enjoying playing basketball much more than he did at any point last year. And 2, I think he's sort of coming out to prove that he can still be that guy. And Monday night, for a game in October, was about as big of a statement as you can make if you're Darius Garland. Because this is a team that I think the Cavs do consider to be one of their rivals, certainly an Eastern Conference opponent that they're going to be battling with in the standings near the end of the year. And Darius Garland went in there and made a huge statement. The Cavs as a whole made a huge statement on Monday night. They were terrific in a number of different ways, and I will get to those coming up in segment number 2, because I want to focus on Garland, because one of the things too that I think he's benefiting from early on in this season, because it's not just that this was a one-game outlier, right? Like, he was awesome against the Knicks. But I also think when you look at, okay, he was awesome against the Knicks, and this is on the back of a performance where I thought he was really good on Saturday against Washington too. So when you have those two performances back-to-back and you start stacking really good games, I think we're going to start to see that more confident, free-flowing version of Darius Garland that made an all-star team. That was a really good sidekick to Donovan Mitchell the first year Donovan Mitchell was in Cleveland. I think that is the guy Darius Garland is re-announcing himself as. And I think Monday night in New York was a really big step towards doing that. Going to Madison Square Garden and outplaying Jalen Brunson is a really difficult thing to do. Guess what? Darius Garland did that on Monday night. And like, it wasn't a close battle. He was the best player on the floor by a pretty wide margin. For Darius Garland to do that, that's going to be a big boost in confidence for him. I think it's a big boost for this team. And I talked a little bit on yesterday's show about how Darius Garland is somebody who I view as a ceiling raiser. And nights like this are exactly why I view him as a ceiling raiser, not a floor raiser. Because when Darius Garland does this, what it does for the rest of the team is it makes their jobs so much easier. Where you look at Donovan Mitchell, who he had 24 points, which was a very, he had the second most points in the game. It was a very quiet 24 points. He had a really good night, but he doesn't have to carry the load nearly as much as he's been used to having to do in a Cavaliers uniform. And if Darius Garland can have, a night like this every fifth game, what does that do for Donovan Mitchell? What does that do for Evan Mobley? What does that do for Jarrett Allen? What does that do for the rest of this roster? I think a lot. Because one, it also makes the Cavs much more difficult to have to defend. Last year, I don't think it's unfair to say if teams could figure out a way to shut down Donovan Mitchell, they had a really good chance. Right now, if a team shuts down Donovan Mitchell, like say that, and I don't expect this to happen, but say the Lakers just have Donovan Mitchell's number on Wednesday and he can't get things going offensively and he has a tough night. That doesn't mean that they've solved the problem, where I think last year it might have. This year, with this version of Darius Garland, the Cavs are so much more potent offensively. They're so much more dangerous. And I think the shots that Garland's taking are much better. Like I said, he took technically 8 threes. I think it'll be down to 7 threes. That was of his 19 shots. That's a good percentage. He's getting to the rim a little bit more. He's still taking a few of those mid-range shots. Like he took one sort of a leaner on the elbow. I think it was in the first half. It might have been in the second half, whatever, but that doesn't matter. But I'd like to see some of those shots get weeded out of his game a little bit more. But then, he hits a floater along the baseline. That's still a good look. There are shots that are non-paint twos that can still be good shots, right? It's not all mid-range jump shots are bad shots. And Darius Garland is capable of taking good mid-range jump shots. There's no question about that. But I think his shot selection is getting to a place where the Cavs are in a really good spot with it. The other thing that I want to mention with Garland is the way that he's playing defense. He was tasked with guarding Mikal Bridges quite a bit, and that was, I think, a little bit rough for him, just considering the size advantage that Bridges has over him. But there were some possessions, particularly late in the game, where he defended Jalen Brunson, or he was switched onto Jalen Brunson, because I do think the Cavs wanted to have Dean Wade defending Brunson. I understand why. And Garland did his job. And I think that Garland has, I don't know that if it's a better effort or a better buy-in defensively. I don't know if those are the right words, but I do think he's playing better defense. And again, this is very early on. The Cavs have played 4 games. Let's not act like this is a 50-game sample size. Everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt because of how early it is. But I think the level of awareness, the level of attentiveness that he's had defensively has been really good. There was that block that he had on Jalen Brunson in the fourth quarter, and I will talk about that a little bit later coming up in today's show. but I'm not sure that he makes that type of play at other points in his career. But the fact that on Monday night he was able to step up and do it when the Cavs needed it, like that was a big moment in this game. If Brunson makes that shot, I don't think the Knicks win, but I think by blocking that shot from Garland, it sort of ensured that the Cavs were going to win. Like that was one of those slamming the door shut type of moments. And even the one in transition where he was able to get his hand on the basketball, Brunson should have had an easy layup. That's in the fourth quarter. That can change the game pretty drastically if that goes down. Now, of course, on the very next inbounds play, Jalen Brunson gets touched on the shoulder by Darius Garland and falls down like a feather. But Garland was able to play good enough defense there to prevent 2 points. Brunson actually did miss one of those freebies. So that actually saved the Cavaliers a point. And I think free throws don't necessarily create the same momentum oftentimes as breakaway layups can. So I do think Garland deserves credit for his defense, but offensively, no, he was fantastic. That's the story of this game. Darius Garland's offense was absolutely terrific. 34 points at MSG against the New York Knicks. If this is who Darius Garland is going to be, if this is who this Cavs team is going to be, and it's early, and I don't want to overreact to early season basketball games, but if this is who this team is going to be, I think they're a championship contender. Like this is a different caliber of team. I'm somebody who was high on Darius Garland coming into this season. I'm somebody who was higher on the Cavs, I think, than consensus coming into the season. And it is early, and I'm not saying that I think they are there. But if this is who they truly are, and if they keep getting better, then I do think that this is a team that we have to readjust our expectations on. Well, more players than just Darius Garland helped to contribute to the Cavs' win over the Knicks on Monday nights. Let's talk about those guys, including Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my number one go-to ticket marketplace. It should be your number one go-to ticket marketplace. Tomorrow night, a special night inside Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. The Cavs are going to be celebrating, the 30th anniversary of that building, once formerly known as Gund Arena, and then the Q, now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, turning 30 years old this season. But you know what I'm talking about. LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers coming to town. And if you want to be in attendance for that game on Wednesday night, I've got just the place for you to go. That place is Game Time. Game Time has the best deals. They've got the best features on their app too, like all-in pricing. Toggle that thing on, and then you don't have to worry about being surprised with taxes and fees at the last minute. You will know up front what you're paying for the great seats that you're going to be able to find at Game Time. Another thing Game Time does that I love, they'll show you what your view of the court looks like. No matter where you're sitting, click on that seat. Maybe you wanted to see, a few different views. There's a few different seats you're interested in buying. Game Time will show you what your view looks like. So what you need to do is download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA, that's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. What time is it? It's Game Time. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can get the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and be a friend of the Locked On Cavs podcast, and tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. If you're watching the show on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you're not watching this on YouTube, just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube, go find this video, and then do those things I just said to do. But Darius Garland was not the only reason the Cavs won this game on Monday night over the New York Knicks. There were several reasons, and I think reason number 2, as far as players for the Cavaliers go, would have to be Donovan Mitchell. Donovan, I think, has had a very good start to this season. His numbers might not be as gaudy as they can be at times, where he's capable of going off for 45 points on any night. Like, he's that type of scorer. But what I do think we have seen from Donovan Mitchell early on in the season is we are watching him sort of learn what everyone else is going to be capable of this year. And I think that Donovan has the belief in his teammates that guys like Evan Mobley and Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen are capable of greatness. But what I think we've seen is him taking a bit of a step back and letting those guys find it for themselves. And what that does is it makes Donovan's life on the court easier. There's no doubt about that, because when Darius and Evan are playing the way that we've seen them play early on this season, Donovan doesn't have to do quite as much. He doesn't have to carry the same load on his shoulders. He doesn't have to be the focal point of every opposing defense. Now, most nights he's going to be, because he still is the best player on the Cavaliers. And there's not a question about that. Like, he is still awesome. He's still an all-NBA player. But if the rest of the supporting cast is going to be like this, it allows Donovan to sort of pick his spots a little bit more. And he doesn't have to do this on an every night basis. And that's really important, because you look at what happened last year, where he missed some time near the end of the season with what I believe has been described as a wear and tear type of injury, because he had to do so much for so long during that season. And part of that was because Darius Garland and Evan Mobley missed such a significant chunk of time due to injury. So that's not necessarily because those guys weren't good enough. It's because they weren't in the lineup. That's a big part of it. But if he doesn't have to carry such a massive load on a nightly basis, then it gives him the ability to should be at least, fresher when the end of the season arrives. He should be able to be somebody that can say, okay, you know what? I've had to do a lot, but I haven't had to do as much as I've done in the past. And then when the season that actually matters for this Cavs team, which is the postseason, when that arrives, Donovan should be in a better spot. And if we see Darius Garland continue to have nights like he had tonight, if we continue to see Evan Mobley be aggressive offensively, and I thought he was very good tonight, not quite as good as he was opening night, but I thought he was very good tonight against the Knicks, you're not going to see, we saw, I think, 11 40-point games from Donovan Mitchell his first year, 13 40-point games his first year in Cleveland. You're not going to see that stuff, because it's not going to be necessary. And I think if it's not necessary and the Cavs are able to win while allowing Donovan Mitchell to take a bit of a step back, I'm not saying he's not going to be the best player on the team anymore, because that's not true. But if he's allowed to have an off night and the Cavs are still able to find ways to win against good teams, that's a great sign for the future of this season in particular, and the next several years in Cleveland. Because if that's the case, the Cavs are going to be so much better than they have been. I mean, Donovan was, I thought, really good on Monday night. He finished with 24 points, had 5 assists, thought he was really good, but he didn't need to be the guy, because Darius Garland was able to be the guy. I think it does say a lot about Donovan too, especially on a stage like New York, where he's more than willing to take that back seat for a night and say, you know what, Darius, you got this rolling, go win this. I think that's a great sign too. I really think that's a great sign of this team, because in watching them on TV and just being around this team during training camp and at shoot-arounds and stuff like that, they do seem like a team that is bought in together. And Donovan Mitchell playing the role that he played on Monday night against the Knicks, I think that's another really good sign of that. As far as Evan Mobley goes, I thought he got off to a slow start. Like, he didn't do much in the first quarter. He really didn't get touches in the first quarter, but I thought in the last 3 quarters, he was pretty aggressive. I thought he was pretty good. He finished with 17 points, 8 rebounds. I thought he played really strong defense, which is just the expectation. That's the norm for him. I mean, it's honestly not even worth mentioning just how consistent he is on that end of the floor. Wasn't his best game, but I thought I thought he played much better than he did against Washington. I thought he was more aggressive. I think Wednesday night's going to be a really big night when he matches up against Anthony Davis. That is a matchup I am very, very, very excited to see what he looks like against the Lakers and against Anthony Davis. And I think that one of the things that the Cavs really struggled with in the first half, that was a big reason why they were able to turn things around in the second half, was the ability to rebound. In the first half, the Cavs struggled so badly on the boards. The Knicks had 11 offensive rebounds in the first half. That was, I think, the biggest reason why New York had a lead at halftime. I think it was that. And I think it was because the Cavs struggled shooting three-pointers. They were like 5 of 20 or something in the first half. It was not pretty. In the second half, the Cavs really shored up the offensive glass. Well, their defensive glass. The Knicks only had 2 offensive rebounds in the entire second half after having 11 in the first half. It is so much easier to be a good defense when you only have to defend one shot, when you don't have to defend 2, 3, maybe even 4 attempts on a single possession. When that happens, other teams are going to score. It's really difficult to stop a team 3 times in once. And I was watching on FanDuel TV that Kenny Atkinson's press conference after the game, and he said the only clip he showed during halftime was a possession where the Knicks got 3 offensive rebounds on one possession, and they were able to score. And that was something that you cannot have if you're defending. You cannot survive defending like that. That's a really difficult way to play defense. If that happens, you kind of have to forget about it, move on. But bringing that up, I think, at halftime was the right thing to do, because then the Cavs in the second half didn't have that issue whatsoever. In the second half, they out-rebounded the Knicks 21-15. And that was after getting just destroyed on the boards in the first half. That was a really, really big deal for the Cavs. The one last thing I do want to say about this matchup with the Knicks, because now I don't believe the Cavs play the Knicks for quite some time, and they could look very different next time these two teams match up just by figuring things out. Like, this was their 4th game with Karl Anthony Towns in the lineup, and he is still learning how to play there. They are still learning how to play with him. But I think the addition of Towns has pretty drastically changed how the Cavs and Knicks match up with each other. I don't think they are as potent of an offensive rebounding team. I know they just had a great first half and a poor second half doing that. But him being away from the basket so much more on offense, I think changes that equation for the Cavs. I think Karl is a really, really good offensive player. He's one of the best shooting big men that has ever played basketball. But I think that the Cavs playing 2 bigs, especially 2 bigs that are able to defend out on the perimeter, I don't think the Knicks have the same offensive advantage now against the Cavs that they have against other teams and that they might have had before. I think that the Cavs actually match up a little bit better with New York now that Towns is in the picture. And defensively, Karl's not a very good rim protector, and who knows when Mitchell Robinson will be back as he deals with yet another injury. But the Knicks right now just don't defend the basket as well as I think the Knicks used to. And I think that is something that very much plays into Cleveland's benefit for when these two teams do meet up for some. They will have high stakes games like they played the last week of the season. So these teams will play high stakes games against each other. And I just don't think these are the same New York Knicks that beat the Cavs in 5 games in the playoffs a few years back. I think that this matchup looks much different than it did back then. Up next, player of the game. I think you know where I'm going to go for my player of the game, but play of the night, well, we'll talk through that right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Also, make sure you check out our new newsletters. Locked On is doing a newsletter for your team every day. You can sign up for the Cavs newsletter at the link in this show description, something I put together and send out every single day. You don't want to miss it. If you want to be a smarter Cavs fan, I'm here to help. I'm here to try and make your fan experience better. Also, if you're watching the show on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. So player of the game, very controversial here, but I'm going to go with Darius Garland. 34 points, was terrific, had 15 of those points in the fourth quarter. The Cavs were actually trailing the Knicks with 4 minutes and 19 seconds left in the third quarter. It was quite a struggle. They were down 72-59 with 4:19 left in the third quarter. From that point on, they outscored New York 51-32. In that stretch, Darius Garland had 19 of his 34 points. He was awesome at the end of the third and all throughout the fourth. He's the player of the game without question. Like I said, if Garland keeps playing like this, it's going to change who the Cavs can be. He had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks as well to go along with his 34 points. Cavs outscored the Knicks by 5 points in the 33 minutes that he was on the floor. As for the play of the night, I'm going to go with his block of Jalen Brunson. If you think back to the fourth quarter, the Cavs wanted to have Dean Wade defending Jalen Brunson when he was in the game. Kenny Atkinson was doing an offense-defense switch with Dean Wade and Karis LeVert, and there were times when Jalen Brunson was able to get Darius Garland switched onto him. Dean Wade is a better defender than Darius Garland. There's no real argument there, but I thought Garland really competed, and I thought the play of the night for him was when he got switched onto Brunson, and then Brunson took him down to the left block. Garland was able to get a block shot. Evan Mobley came over to help, but Garland's the one that got a hand on the basketball. That was a really big play for the Cavs. It was when they were up 103-98, and that was something that could have changed that game. You know, if that goes in, it's a one-possession game with over a minute left. Instead, the Cavs are able to get a stop. They're able to go down to the other end. They're able to really put some distance between themselves and New York. I think if that play is not made, I don't know that the Knicks win. But because that play was made, I think that was sort of the moment. Okay, the Cavs are going to win this one. And it started removing any doubt that you might have had about the Cavs' chances to get a win in New York. But I thought this was a great win. The Cavs moved to 4-0. They've had a really impressive start to the season. The first 3 opponents were not very good, but the Cavs did what they're supposed to do against opponents that are not very good, and that is win decisively, win in blowout fashion. The Knicks are one of the best teams in basketball. They're going to be a team that wins 50-plus games if they stay healthy. I don't have any doubts about that. I think the Knicks are really, really good. But to go into MSG, I don't care if it's October 28th or not, to go into MSG and get a win like that, I think Cavs fans should be very happy. I think it's one of the more impressive wins that we've seen league-wide in the NBA so far this year. So that's what Cavs fans have to be happy about. This is the first game of a 7-game stretch that's really difficult. I think if the Cavs can go 4-3 or 5-2 in the 7-game stretch, you should be thrilled. Well, they're off to a 1-0 start now. They've got the Los Angeles Lakers coming to town on Wednesday night. So we will be back to talk about that on tomorrow's Locked On Cavs. But I do want to say, again, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Also, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching this video, give me a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow with another episode.